and now you're pursuing professional wrestling and getting into it. Were you a fan growing up?
Yes and no. That is my favorite answer. So wrestling growing up was around in my life, in my household. I grew up with a brother. He's 2 years older than me, and then my cousins on my father's side are all boys. There was two of them, so I was always the odd one out, and they would practice wrestling moves on me around the house and stuff. And I literally just wanted to hang out with them all of the time. So like they would turn on wrestling and stuff, and I would just sit there and like would watch. And they would always let me like be one of like the characters like for Christmas and stuff. I remember they would always get like little like wrestling rings with like the figures and stuff,
Yeah.
and I would just like have my Barbies and stuff. But I was just like, I don't want those. I want to play with like what you guys are doing. So
Yeah.
loosely it was. But I wouldn't sit here and say that I was a die-hard fan growing up as well. I
Sure.
knew loosely, I understood what wrestling was. I was intrigued by like The Undertaker, Stone Cold. I love him. So like
Yeah.
that era. But I fondly remember my first memory of wrestling. I can't recall how old I was, but I was actually in Texas, and my aunt, her mother-in-law was there at the time, and we were all just hanging out. And I remember she was like, "Oh, it's Monday night. Like, can I put on like wrestling or something?" And we all just like I remember my father and brother being like, "Yeah, put it on." And all I remember at the time, I was like watching, I was like, oh, like there's no women, but there was women like in roller skates, just like skating around the ring. So I was just like, interesting. I don't know what any of this is. And I suppose that is literally my first memory of wrestling, if you will.
Yeah, and it's kind of interesting that the role of women in wrestling has taken off, and it's cool to see more opportunities have opened up, especially with WoW, where you are
Yeah.
currently. How did you get involved with women in wrestling?
Well, so again, like I said, my whole life is, I don't even want to say a happy accident anymore, but I'm a firm believer in the universe and everything is connected and intertwined. So back to my fitness modeling days, I had met these two twins. They go by the name, well, their name is Lindsay and Lori. You might know them as Miami Sweet Heat. I
Hmm.
had met them at a fitness competition, and I just remember chatting with them. I wasn't competing myself at the time. I was actually just there backstage helping out with stuff. And I just remember talking to these girls, and they had mentioned something about wrestling, and I just kind of looked at them and I was like, "Oh, like you guys wrestle?" And they're like, "Yeah, like like I know it's different, but like whatever." And I was like, "Oh, like yeah, like I had a tryout with wrestling. Nothing came from it." And they're like, "Oh my God, girl, you have to get back into it." And I just remember staying the power of social media. We stayed in touch through social media. I don't recall how many years had passed. It was at least like 5 since then till now. And I just remember chatting with them online. I actually had fallen back into wrestling. So I was training, and they're like, "Girl, we have to tell you about this company. It's called Wow Women of Wrestling. Like we just started working there. Like you would be a great fit. Like send your stuff here." And I just remember I was like, no, 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 I'm not ready. Like, not going to send anything. And again, just stayed in touch with them. And I remember one night I was driving home from an independent show, and I was just like in my car, just driving, so sad because I was just like, damn, like, that was kind of a crummy match, kind of a crummy venue. It was just like not what
What
I
you
feel
thought
like
it
it should
was?
be.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I'm still out here trying to make a name for myself. This was maybe my like third match ever. So, I understood you have to kind of build your way up. And I just remember driving home, and the twins text me. They're like, "Okay, David McLean is going to call you soon, like answer your phone." And that is the owner, one of the owners of Women of Wrestling, David McLean. And I still kind of thought it was not a joke, but I was just like, yeah, yeah, like whatever. And I'm driving and my phone rings and I answer it and it's like, Nikki, this is David McLean, owner of Women of Wrestling. How are you? And I'm like, oh, okay. Like, yeah. And I'm like talking to him. He's like, okay, like, can you fly out tomorrow, like to start filming? And I was like, wait, what? I was like, no, like I still have to pack. Like I could leave the next day. And I think honestly, from the time I answered him on the phone, I had flew out to LA to start filming. This was in September. So it feels like everything happened overnight and is one of those things where people are like, oh, it's an overnight sensation. But mind you, my story started when I was 4. So, you know, it feels like everything finally happened, but also it was just the right time and the right place kind of thing because, you know, I had this brand new mindset and everything. So it was happened then and I'm just having a blast.